Okay, now, I need my 6 volunteers. Could you stand up and pass out my handouts? You 6. And I have a handout, 1 per couple and 1 per single, okay? So if you would like one, I would like you to have it. We're going to use it for the last 12, 17 minutes, okay? So they're going to hand them out. If you don't want one, just go like this. Be like Al. And we'll really wonder about you. And the rest of us, as they're doing that, turn to Ephesians 5. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and explain the doctrine of marriage, okay? And the doctrine of marriage is how God designed marriage to be. And it's designed and written out in Ephesians 5, 22 to 33. And it's basically not knowing the truth, but applying it. And so what I'm giving to you is how to apply the doctrine of marriage. Now, someone said to me, wait a minute. There are going to be people that aren't married there. Yeah, but if you ever want to be married, this is what it's supposed to be. And if you ever were married, this is what it's supposed to be. And if you are married, this is what it's supposed to be. Or if you have someone that you're raising that's someday going to be, you hope, married, this is what it's supposed to be. This is the pure biblical doctrine of marriage. If you didn't get one, hold your hand up and wave it, and they'll give you, we have a few right down here. Okay, right down here. Thank you, Mr. Lahusky. And my friend, quality craftsman. Okay, raise your hand. He's handing them out right here. And one over here in the front. We need one more down here. Right there. Anybody else? Go like this. I don't want you to miss it. Oh, the Monies need one. Good. I keep mine right here in my wallet. That's why they're shaped like that, because I like things to be accessible, and I keep it right in my wallet. It's just like a credit card. And this is what, let's start, the front, let's all get oriented. The front, at the front says Word-Filled Marriage, Ephesians 5. And then you open it up, and on the left side, halfway down, it says the Ephesians 5 man. If you see that on your card, say yes. Okay. Now, I'll show you how the card's designed to be. Okay? The card is designed to be like this. Mr. Jameson, come on up here. I want you to pretend you're Bonnie. This is what I do with Bonnie. I forgot your first name. Andy. I take my card like this, and the first bullet, you see under Ephesians 5, man, it has a bullet. I turn like this, and I look at Bonnie, and I say, honey? Now, this would really go where my son goes to school in San Francisco. This would be hot stuff, what I'm doing, because that's what they do there. But, honey, I want to love you as my wife and give myself to you today. And you look at your wife. Now, you better go sit down, because this is going to get thick for a second. I just came back from a conference in Hidalgo in Mexico. It's a suburb of Mexico City. It's 2 hours north of Mexico City. A suburb 2 hours north. Mexico City is second, maybe largest city in the world, 25, 30 million, only exceeded by Tokyo or whoever's counting. This little suburb out there has 1 million people. It's a village. And I was sitting with church planners that are working in the drug slum inner cities of Mexico. And these people are killing themselves for the Lord. They are poor. They are very minorly educated, but they're saved, and they want to pour their lives out for Christ. And so there's a foundation in America that gives them enough money to ride buses, and some of them rode 22 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours. And Bonnie and I, we met each one and said, how many hours did you come? And the shortest was like 6. And they all got there, and these are the cream of the crop of the Church of Christ working in Mexico. But you know why they invited me? They said, these people are losing their children. The children are disinterested in Christianity because all they see is their parents overworked, burned out, just never home, and going 2 separate ways. And they said, you know what we need? Instead of more doctrine for them of theology, they need to have the doctrine of marriage. Because they're losing their kids because their kids don't want to be like their parents. They don't see any love. They don't see any attraction. They don't see any romance. All they see is work, go. And God says, no. How do you win the world? By showing Christ's love for the church. What is the most evident, visible expression of Christ's love for the church? What does Ephesians 5 say? Husbands, love your wives in a manner that reflects Christ's love for the church. Every Christian marriage is supposed to be a living, full-color illustration of Christ's love for the church. So there's a fact we've all known. I bet that everybody in this room has heard that and knows that. How on earth do you do that? So these Mexican pastors and their wives are sitting there. I gave them a Spanish version of this. I told them to do what I just asked Mr. Jameson to do, stand there. I said, all of you men turn, look your wife in the eye, and out loud read these words. Since all of you don't have a card, I'll just put it up on the screen. So you don't have to stare at your card. Everything on the card I'm going to put on the screen. But the way you're supposed to use it is get alone with her and turn and look her in the eye and say this. Do you know what happened while I was doing this? I got through. Now remember, I'm speaking English. There's a translator in Spanish. So I said, I want to love you. And there was da-da-da-da-da. And I said, with the same love, da-da-da-da-da. And they were repeating. So there was a third element in there. By the time I got through the first bullet, in this auditorium, it was larger than this, I could see from the platform glistening streaks. You know what it was? On the break, Bonnie and I were told by people, women came to me and said, I've never heard my husband. We have, X number of children. We've been married X number of decades. We're involved in everything. I've never heard him look me in the eye and say anything like that in my life. We're married. I've never heard anything like that. Do you know I counsel people constantly? We have 800 families at Calvary. I counsel people constantly. When people are having marriage problems, couples, they come in, and I say, let's just get warmed up here. I said, look at her and say, I love you. And he goes, she knows it. I said, no. Out loud, look her in the eye. They won't even look at each other. That's not our problem. We have other problems. Come on, let's get the counseling down. I said, no. Turn. With your body language, show what you're saying, and look at her affectionately and say, I love you. She knows I do. And they won't. You see, there's something about that if you will confess with your mouth. Did you know salvation is not just thinking it? It's whoever calls on the name of the Lord. There's something about the Lord saying, you go from thinking to actually making a commitment to express this to the one you love. Salvation, I call out to the Lord. I say, you're real. Even though I can't see you, I believe you're real, and I call out to you. And I ask for you to cleanse me, to forgive me. I ask you to come and take over my life. Okay, if you're a man, and either you're married, or you were married, or you hope someday to be married, or you don't want to be embarrassed because I'm watching, repeat these words after me. Say them out loud, okay? Men, you ready? I mean out loud. By the way, I did this at another conference in New York, and I said, let's all say it out loud. And everyone was looking at each other, and I could hear the men saying, he's not talking about us, is he? Honey, he's not saying we. All the men, they just are. Did you know most men have PMS? Passive male syndrome. They are passive because they just have tried so hard and it hasn't worked, and their wife has told them it's not working, and so they just retreat spiritually. And churches are like that. Men are in retreat. And just let the women, they're zealous, let them do it. I mean, if they want to teach and lead, just do it. We're tired. PMS. That's the worst form of spiritual conflict. Passive males. So men, don't be passive. Read with me. You ready? Out loud. I want to love you as my wife and give myself to you today. Then you pause with this card. Oh, this is the moment of truth. I'll never forget when I did this with Bonnie. And I said, is there any way I'm not giving myself to you, honey? And she said this. I'll never forget it. She said, do you want me to answer that? I said, yes, I do. She said, will you get upset? With her radiant smile, will you get upset? And I said, probably. She said, will you get hurt and start pulling back and withdrawing from me like you do when you get hurt? I said, probably. But I still want you to tell me. She said, are you sure? Did you know we don't usually invite our wives to correct things in our life? Did you know that because I'm imperfect and not Christ, I might want to give myself to Bonnie And she doesn't even know it or how I can do it. Here's another one. We have to get to lunch. Men, let's say this. I want to love you with the same devotion Christ has for me as His church. Does Christ ever say, you do that one more time, I'm going to divorce you? And I've got the paperwork ready. And, you know, if you do that one more time, do you feel that when you sin, that Jesus is going to kick you out? How many of you? If you are, you're an Arminian, okay? Because they're always losing their salvation. That is not in the Bible. Jesus said, I will never leave you or forsake you. That's why for Christians, it is a lifelong covenant that we make loving one another as Christ loves the church. He never leaves us or forsakes us or gives up on us or says that was one too many. I won't forgive that one. Is that the Christ we know? That's not the Christ of the Bible. See, I say I want to love you with that same devotion Christ has for me as His church. What happens when I neglect communing with Christ? It's kind of like couples that never talk to each other. Kind of the two Volkswagen lives. They're going two different directions all through life. What happens is they both gradually grow apart. Did you know when I don't spend time with Christ, He still is tagging along, following me everywhere I go? He is never leaving or forsaking me. He is loving me with an everlasting love. He is drawing me. He is saying, I died for you. I gave my life for you. I want to live through you. I want to pour out myself into you. Can you imagine the transformation in marriages? Can you imagine what happened with the sin-scarred, mixed up, warped lives of first century people that lived in Ephesus, that lived in that cesspool, when all of a sudden the men who in the first century, you married a woman only for one reason, to cook, to clean, and to bear legitimate children. So in Roman law, you would have an heir. And she better have a son. And they used to have pater potestas in Latin, which was the word, if you didn't like the kid, you threw him on the garbage. And especially if it was a girl. And she was gathered by the little boys that weren't like became gladiators, and little girls became prostitutes. And the Roman family only wanted perfection, and if he didn't have the perfect child, threw him on the garbage. Christians used to collect them and raise them for Christ. But can you imagine a woman that was raised with this husband that only wanted her for a legitimate baby maker, for an heir, and to keep house and raise the kids, and he never was home. He was always at work or at the gymnasium, or with the women fanning him, feeding him grapes, and pouring wine in his mouth and pleasuring him. Can you imagine when he got saved and came home and looked her in the eye and says, I want to love you, actually for the first time looked her in the eye? I want to love you with the same devotion Christ has for me as His church. There were a lot of tears, I bet, just like I saw in Mexico. Well, here's the next one, men. Come on, there's 7 of them. Men together, I want to spend time in the Word and prayer so that our marriage is sanctified and cleansed each day. You know what that means? The spiritual leader is the leader in the Word, and I'm reading the Word so that God changes me, so that the kids say, boy, Dad, you're different. You are less selfish than you used to be. You are less impatient than you used to be. You are getting so kind. You listen. You're not in so much of a hurry. You're changing. I want to spend time in the Word so that, and we tell our wives that. And you know what men need? Encouragement. Do you know, men are so easily deflated. Most men are like a balloon, and wives can be like a needle, and they're deflated. Like that. Men say, I want to spend time. Okay, here's another one. Come on. Here we go, men. I want you to be all that God has gifted, called, and prepared for you to be, and will work alongside you for that goal. Do you know how your wife is gifted? Do you know how she's called? Do you know how God designed her, what He designed her to be? Have you ever asked her? Are you her biggest cheerleader? Are you the one that says, honey, I want you to be everything God created and designed and ordained for you to be, and I want to be doing everything I can to help you with that? No, we don't talk about stuff like that, We talk about finances and planned vacations, and kids' education. How about this one? Come on, man. Here we go. I want to love you, care for you, nourish, cherish, and serve you in the same way that I care for my own body and its needs. I said this at New York, and all the glitterati from New York City were there, and one wife came to me and said, that would be remarkable if my husband did it. She said, he has more different compounds or whatever he uses on shaving his head than I use in all my makeup. She says, he has more different things he puts on. She says, I can't imagine him caring for me with the same level he buys all of his head stuff. And I thought, wow. Can you imagine a wife thinking that a husband thinks more of his hunting gear or his tools or his hobbies or his buddies or his fantasy football, that he thinks more of that than of her? And if it's even possible a woman would think that, this would dispel it with her husband looking her in the eye and saying, I want to love you and care for you and nourish and cherish and serve you in the same way I do with everything I desire. And I want to leave. Now this is the killer. I want to leave anything that hinders me from fulfilling this calling to be your husband. Honey, is there anything that hinders me? Is there anything in my life that you feel is out of balance? Anything that's more important than my calling from God to be the spiritual leader in the home? And if she says, do you really want me to answer that? You say yes. And if she says, will you get upset? You can say, probably. And if she said, will it hurt you? You should say, yes, definitely. Because no one should know us better than our wife. And no one can help us. Did you know marriage is one of the greatest sanctification tools? It's when we realize how selfish, how self-centered, and how desperately needy we are of sanctification. Then, I want to get closer and closer to you the longer we live. Did you know that the Bible says that husbands and wives are supposed to not be agape love, that's sacrificial love. They're already that. Most women agape their husbands to death. They pick up after them, they cook for them, they listen to them, they serve them in so many ways. It's agape sacrificial love. Phileo love is the love of close friendship. And most women are closer to their mother and their sisters and their kids than to their husbands. And that's unbiblical. God says your husband is to be your very closest and best friend in the world. Why? Because that our prayers not be hindered. There is nothing more powerful than a husband and wife who are totally in agreement, and they can pray. When one of our children was at their most desperate hour, running away from the Lord, the greatest testimony I'll ever hear in my life was that child said to me, to Bonnie and to me, you are ruining my life. I said, ruining your life? We house you, we feed you, we buy your clothes? They said, you know what I mean. I'm at the party and I'll be sliding off the prettiest girl in the party. I'll have my bottle of alcohol and I'm loosening her up and all of a sudden she'll throw up. And I'll know it's because you're praying. You ruined my night. You are ruining my life. You see, there is no limit to what God will do if any two of you agree as touching anything. I will do it. It's amazing. And then here's the final one, men. I commit to love you this way. I mean, after you pick your wife up off the floor, don't do all these at once. It causes heart palpitations and arrhythmia and everything else. But I suggest one at a time and spend a long time talking about it and showing you're really listening. By your face, your eyes, body language, voice, say, I really want to hear. But I commit to love you this way. It's the way God designed marriage to be. By the way, I'm not reading from my friend from Grace Community Church, Eddie Eggerich's book. I'm reading from the Bible. Love and Respect is a great book. But this is actually in the Bible. This is God's design for marriage. I'm quoting, that's verse 33. I want to commit to love you this way because that's the way God designed marriage to be. And I need you to help and encourage me. That's why it says the women must respect their husbands. Respect his little tiny efforts. And don't say, oh, the other men do it so much better, come on. Just say, thank you for even looking at me while you're talking. You didn't read it right, but thank you for looking at me. Encourage him. Even when I'm not doing it as well as I should or could. Okay, women, you thought I wasn't going to get you. I'll just, come on, ladies, we're going to do it fast. We're supposed to be out in 3 minutes. So, ladies, it's totally up to you. We get out on time. Together, ladies, all of you that either are married, want to be married, have been married, or know someone that should be married and you want to counsel them in God's way, repeat after me, ladies. I want to follow. Do you know what the Bible says? That you are to submit to your husband. Boy, that big S word. Did you know submit does not mean obey? It doesn't. Hupakuo means to line up in your gender-specific role that God designed. God already said in Galatians 3:28 that men and women are equal spiritually. It's one of the few verses I doubt a little bit because I actually think women are more spiritual than men. But God says they're equal, but in common knowledge, there are more women serving the Lord in missions in every form than men. They are more spiritual than men. But God says we're equal. But gender-specific roles are, men are supposed to be in front. Dads are supposed to lead families and homes, and men are to lead churches. Women are to encourage and even though they're smarter, faster, and more spiritual and everything else, they're supposed to line up and say, come on, everybody, get in your kids, you're here, I'm here, mom's here, you're there, dad's there, let's go. That's the Bible. Do you know why we have mixed up families? Mothers lead the homes or children lead the homes. And dad veges out and sleeps in his chair or his workshop or his stand where he's hunting. Because that's his ordered world. And family and home is not ordered. Because he, for whatever reason, is not doing his gender-specific role. Okay, ladies, sorry. I don't want to make us late. Here we go. Second one. Wow, that's verse 33. Ladies. Wow. Do you know the power of looking at your husband and saying, honey, I've had such a long and full, busy day. Would you just read a couple verses to me? Husband will say, you want me to read to you? Yeah. Right now? Yeah. Why? Do you have cancer? What's wrong? This is so rare. Okay, come on, ladies. And I'll read this one. I will allow you to love me. I'll allow you to care for me, to nourish me, to cherish me, to serve me in the same way that I care for my own body. And this is the killer, because this is the hardest for most women. I will leave anything like Pinterest and Facebook and talking 4 hours a day to my mom and my sisters and my life being totally sown to the children. I will leave anything that hinders me from fulfilling this calling. Did you know men are like a fire hydrant? A fire hydrant that has the spigot off is going to flow, and their affection and love is going to flow somewhere. And if you are not allowing it to flow your way, they will find somewhere to spray their affections. And as a pastor for 38 years, most of the affairs, which are adultery in the Bible terms, have been men that are amazing with women that you look at their wife and you look at the man, and those two go together, but that one doesn't fit with him. He is amazing, and she is unlike him. But she was the one at work that just said, boy, do you look handsome. You're the biggest, most wonderful man. I wish I would eat my lunch with you every day if I could. And his wife has no time for him. I will leave anything that hinders me. And finally, I'm committed to love you this way because that's the way God designed marriage to be. And I need you to help and encourage me, even when I'm not doing it as well as I should, what the Bible says, or could, because I have Christ in me. Well, that's Marriage Divine Style, and that's transformational.